Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Live from the Rock Sports Network studios in beautiful Rochester, New York, it's your Rochester Sports Show, Rochester Sports Mumblings, presented by Salvatore's Old Fashioned Pizzeria. And here's your host, Matt Goldman.
Oh, thank you so much, Rob. That was awesome. And he's out. That's it. Quickest intro in history. Thank you so much. That was amazing, Rob. And he does a show also on Rock Sports Network, our home network, that you may be hearing me on right now, actually. He does a show called The Big Schmoz. It's a wrestling show, and it's absolutely fantastic. I would recommend that anyone who is a fan of wrestling or just good podcasting, check out Rob's show on rocksportsnetwork.com. Welcome to Rochester Sports Mumblings. This is exciting. I am in the Rock Sports Network studios here in Gates, right outside of downtown Rochester. It's a beautiful day. It's a Tuesday. If you're listening live, you know that. If you're listening on tape delay, you might be wondering what day it is. It is Tuesday afternoon when I'm recording this. The Red Wings just won again. Right before I came into the studio, I was listening to the game. Josh Wetzel, the legendary Red Wings broadcaster, Josh Wetzel on Fox Sports 1280 WHCK in Rochester, with the call as the Red Wings beat the Durham Bulls 4-3. Chin Wei Hu. Yes, he did not bat, unfortunately, so there was no who's on first jokes at Frontier Field today. But he was the pitcher, called up for a spot start from Single A Fort Myers, from the Fort Myers Miracle of the Florida State League. That's the Twins affiliate down in Florida. He got the start today, and just continuing the fantastic pitching performances of late from Red Wings pitchers. Six innings pitched, 2 hits allowed, just a lone run allowed. A.J. Octor with his 5th save, and the Red Wings won their 3rd straight game, continuing to hold first place in the North Division. Now with a 22-16 record, this is the best Red Wings start since 2007. Exciting stuff going on at Frontier Field in downtown Rochester. And the reason that Who got the call today to start the game was the Red Wings are playing a day-night doubleheader, which is very rare in the minor leagues. Pretty much the only level you'll see it at is in AAA, and usually it's not a pre-planned out thing, but it was this year. They had to squeeze in 4 games into a 3-game series, basically, because there was an error in the schedule when it came out. They switched the schedule for it. We talked about this with Greg Campa when he was on. He hosts the Red Wings radio show on WYSL 1040 on Friday nights at 6:30. Check him out. He does an amazing job covering the Red Wings. But we talked to him about this. The International League switched up the schedule format a little bit this year, where you used to just play in the exact same number of games against every team that's not in your division, 4 on the road, 4 at home. It makes a lot of sense. It makes for a very balanced schedule, and it ensures that the race for the playoffs is very consistent. They changed it up a little bit this year. Randy Mobley, the president of the International League, said that because they wanted to go towards more of a major league style scheduling where you schedule based on the fact that there's 7 days in a week and not 8. It's, not a Hebrew calendar. So I think that's right. I think they have 8 days in a Hebrew calendar. I don't know. I should know. But anyways, so they want to do like a 4-game set and then a 3-game set, and that'll balance out the 7-game week. So it's a little different this year. They're supposed to play 4 games in Durham. They had to change that up because the ACC college baseball tournament going on at Durham Bulls Athletic Park as we speak. So they moved the series to Rochester, and they had to squeeze in 4 games in the 3 days. So the Red Wings play again tonight. If you're listening live, go check them out, 7:05 at Frontier Field. Also, the game's on television tonight, Time Warner Cable Channel 26 in Rochester. Red Wings have won 3 straight. They're hot. This is their best start since 2007. As I said, the pitching has been unbelievable. Last night, Monday night, Tommy Malone with a complete game shutout. Those are rare in the minor leagues, especially in May, because we're still, usually in the minor leagues, it takes until actually about June before pitchers are allowed to go the distance, to go all 9 innings. It's different for this Red Wings team. Mike Quade talked about this, the Red Wings manager. The Twins started spring training earlier than almost every other major league team this year, which I think gave them a huge advantage coming out of the gate. And their minor leaguers were starting early as well. So because of that, the Twins allowed their pitchers to actually go over just about 100 pitches in April, which is really, really rare for the minor leagues. Usually in April, you see guys limited to 80 to 90 pitches. The Twins let their guys go all the way to 100, and now they're letting Mike Quade's allowed to let guys, it looks like, go to 110, 115 pitches, which for May is remarkable in the minor leagues. We're in this era of baseball where everything is kept track of very tightly. The scouting is very thorough. And, part of that culture is pitch counting, and people are very concerned about their pitch counts. It's refreshing to see a manager like Mike Quade who, I think because the fact that he's been managing since 1985 and the fact that he managed the Chicago Cubs for 2 seasons, and with all the scrutiny that brings with you to manage the Cubs, and there's a lot of scrutiny in Chicago. It's New York, Chicago, L.A. Those are the 3 toughest places, I think, to be a coach in any of the 4 major team sports that we have in North America. And, you might want to add Toronto to that as well. But, with that experience, I think that the Twins trust him with this AAA club in Rochester, and I think it's paying dividends. I think, we talked to Mike Quade a couple weeks ago, and, he talked about how writers in the minor league cities, and they did in Rochester, will ask him, what his strategy is, winning compared to development. And he said, just like in any minor league sport, there's got to be a balance. The first priority obviously has to be to develop the players to play in the major leagues and to win games in the major leagues, because that's what they're paid for. That's why guys get paid millions of dollars in the major leagues, to win ball games for their club, so their club can sell more tickets and sell more merchandise and win World Series and sell more and more. It's a business, of course. But along with that, it is helpful to win in AAA, especially to win in the minor leagues. It builds a culture of winning throughout the organization. And when you get guys used to winning in the minor leagues, a lot of people believe, and I believe, they get used to winning in the major leagues. So I think it's important to have a winning club. A team like the Durham Bulls that the Red Wings played today and are playing again tonight and again tomorrow night at Frontier Field, they have won. They've made the playoffs in the International League 13 out of 17 seasons that they've been affiliated with Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has always had one of the best minor league systems since they've been in the major leagues. And, part of that, I think, is because they came in as an expansion team. So their first couple seasons, they weren't very good. So they're getting a lot of good draft picks. And, the good draft picks kind of just pile up. And that builds a good minor league system. You look at the Twins, they went through some tough times in the major leagues. Since Target Field, the brand new stadium in downtown Minneapolis, was built, the Twins have not been good. In fact, they've been downright terrible until this year. I think getting Ron Gardenhire out, he went out on his own terms, as he deserved to do so. He was one of the greatest managers ever. Who knows? He could be a Hall of Fame candidate. With Paul Molitor now taking over, who he was a roving instructor in the minor leagues, taking over as the major league manager this year, the Twins have made a remarkable turnaround. They're one of the biggest surprises in Major League Baseball, and I think they have a legitimate shot at the playoffs, which I think would surprise everyone in baseball, but it could happen. Or teams like the Houston Astros, they have been the worst team in Major League Baseball over the past 3 seasons. Now they're the best team in baseball record-wise. And it's not a coincidence. When you're bad for a long time, you stockpile the best draft picks. These guys work their way up through your minor league system, and eventually they make it to the major leagues, and you have a good team. And that's what Tampa's been about, and that's what I think the Twins are being about now. I was mentioning Durham making the playoffs 13 out of 17 seasons. That's remarkable, considering it is extremely difficult to make the playoffs in the International League. In fact, it's more, if you do the math, I think it's more difficult to make the playoffs in the International League than in the major leagues. 4 out of 14 teams make the playoffs in the International League. 10 out of 30 make it in the major league. So it's a little bit more difficult to make the playoffs in the International League. Which it goes to show that kind of success is amazing. The Red Wings missed the playoffs last year, but not by much. They were a pretty good team last year. The year before, they made the playoffs for the first time since, I believe, 2006, when they went to the Governor's Cup Finals against Toledo and lost in 5 games. That 5th game, which I was at, they lost 10-0. It was rough. They had played a great series up until then, and they just I forgot who was pitching for the Red Wings in that game 5 in 2006, but he fell flat on his ass. I think it was like 6 runs in the first inning, and it was just over. Speaking of that 2006-2005 era, the Red Wings had a pitcher by the name, and I think all Rochester baseball fans should remember this name, Francisco Liriano, one of the best pitchers I ever saw pitch in Rochester, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. He was a note in the Red Wings game notes lately due to the fact that Tommy Malone, who, as I mentioned, had a complete game shutout last night, 13 strikeouts, was the most strikeouts for a Red Wings pitcher since Francisco Liriano in 2005. So amazing stuff coming from Tommy Malone. Now, Tommy Malone, the story on him, he was sent down by the Twins, and he made 3 starts already with the Red Wings. 23 and a third innings pitch. He has allowed, ladies and gentlemen, 0 runs. 0 runs in 23 and a third innings. He's just dominating in the International League right now. He was the International League Pitcher of the Week last week, and I think he's going to be the Pitcher of the Week again. I know they probably don't like to repeat these awards in the International League, but I think in this case you have to. How could you not? He's been unstoppable for the Red Wings, and they're lucky to have him, but you got to think he's going to get called up to the Twins pretty soon. Speaking of call-ups, Aaron Hicks, who had been tearing it up this year for the Red Wings so far, he finally got called up to the Twins. That happened just after we recorded our last show last week, or I would have mentioned it. But finally, Aaron Hicks got a shot up in the majors. Eddie Rosario's still up with the Twins. So some Red Wings making some rounds up with the Twins. The whole Twins organization is looking pretty positive this year, and I think it's exciting times both here in Rochester and Minneapolis. Can't forget, we give away Rhinos tickets on this show every week through our Rhinos trivia question. This week, you will win 4 tickets to the Rhinos' second round U.S. Open matchup. That will be Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, just tomorrow, actually. Wow, it's coming up quickly. Tomorrow, 7:05, the Rhinos host Greater Binghamton FC Thunder of the NPSL. For those of you not familiar with the Open Cup, it is the oldest soccer cup in America. It's an annual tournament that involves an all-time high this year of 91 teams participating. The Rhinos are still the only non-MLS team to ever win the Open Cup since MLS came to be, and they probably will remain that for a while. There was a bit of a scare as far as that record goes 3 years ago, I believe it was, in 2012, when the Charleston Battery made it all the way to the U.S. Open Cup final semifinal, and lost in the semifinal. That was really the only time when it was looking like, the Rhinos might lose that distinction of being the only team to win it. I can't see a USL team winning the Open Cup anytime soon, but an NASL team, you never know. I mean, a team like the Cosmos they're pretty good. They spend a lot of money on that team to bring in free agents, and You never know. They could compete. I was talking to a friend about this last night. Actually, a sponsor, Johnny from Leroy Discount Liquor, and that's a good segue. Go check out Johnny at Leroy Discount Liquor. He's located out in Leroy. Guys, it's really not even that far. I know you're thinking Leroy. Oh my God, I'm gonna drive out all the way out to Leroy to get my liquor and my wine, but it's really not that out far. It's a nice drive. They got a great selection of wine and whiskey, and he's recently expanded his whiskey selection. Go check him out in the Tops Plaza in Leroy, 128 West Main Street in the village of Leroy. So I was talking to Johnny from Leroy Discount Liquor about this. The NASL compared to the USL, I think the gap has closed in recent years, and I think that the Rhinos being at the top of the USL table this year could probably compete pretty well with a lot of NASL teams. They played an NASL team in the preseason this year, as they did last year. They played Ottawa. Both times it was a draw. So, goes to show you, I don't think there's that much of a difference. I mean, if the Rhinos had played an MLS club in the preseason, even with the MLS side obviously fielding a lot of trialists, as the Rhinos did and would, I think they would probably lose 3 or 4. Not that I'm guessing, but, NASL, they competed pretty well. They tied them. So, but there are good teams in the NSL. I think the Cosmos are one of the better teams. So we'll see. Love the Open Cup. Very excited for this year's Open Cup. Anyways, back to our original point of bringing this up. Here's your Rhinos trivia question. Who was the Rhinos goalkeeper in the 1996 U.S. Open Cup final versus DC United? The Rhinos' first season in the A-League, they went all the way to the Open Cup final. That was actually the first year that MLS teams participated in the Open Cup, and the Rhinos went all the way to the final. They played DC United at RFK Stadium. They lost 3-0. Who was the Rhinos goalkeeper? It's a really easy question. Really, really, really easy. If you've been watching soccer in Rochester since the 90s, you're going to know it instantly. If you watch the Lancers, hint, hint, in their first season, hint, hint, you should know the answer as well, hint, hint. So that's the Rhinos trivia question. Go to our Facebook page right now to answer that, and you can win 4 tickets. All right? And, guys, thanks for posting. One of our winners posted a Facebook picture of them at the Rhinos game last week and said, hey, thanks for the tickets, Sports Mumblings. And I was like, okay, that was pretty cool. You're welcome. We love giving away tickets. Love giving away stuff here on the show. So, Red Wings are hot. The Rhinos are hot. They are still undefeated. Unbelievable. The only undefeated team in USL. 7-0-3 now. They drew 1-1 at Wilmington this past Saturday night. Duba, the guy with 4 names. I don't have all 4 names in front of me, so I'm not even going to try. But it's nice that he has a nickname, Duba. So if you don't want to go with all 4 names, you can just call him Duba. He scored an 87th minute goal for the Rhinos in Wilmington. Wilmington then tied it up just about 2 minutes later. So the Rhinos could not hold the lead, but still a point on the road against a very talented roster. Bob Lilly was saying how Wilmington, their record coming in, which I believe was 1-5-3 coming into the match, did not even come close to reflecting the caliber of talent on the Wilmington Hammerheads. So good on the Rhinos for drawing with Wilmington, and they're now 7-0-3. They are hosting, as I said, Greater Binghamton Football Club in the U.S. Open Cup second round. Of course, this is the first round that the Rhinos are playing. They got a bye through the first round, as did all of the USL teams, actually all the professional teams. It was only amateurs in the first round, and GBFC is an amateur club, but there's some good players on that club, and they're dangerous because they've been preparing for this Open Cup for the entire spring. The NPSL teams, which were invited to the Open Cup this year, it was based on qualifying that took place last year, I believe based on their finish in the standings last year. I could be mistaken, I'm not sure. But I do know that the NPSL clubs who were going to play in the Open Cup knew they were coming in. So GBFC has had all spring to prepare for this. They have only played one actual league match so far. And they beat the Western Mass Pioneers of the PDL, another amateur league, the Premier Development League, and the NPSL and the PDL kind of, compete a little bit for franchises and for who is the best fourth division league in America. The PDL is owned by the USL. The NPSL is its own entity. But the NPSL team, GBFC, beat Western Mass on the road in a penalty kick shootout. Sounded like a really exciting match. It was 1-1 tie, and they won 4-3 on penalties. So they earned themselves a trip to Salem Stadium tomorrow night. I hope it's a good crowd. Usually the second round matches are for attendance. They're a little rough, and it's going to be a little chilly tomorrow, Wednesday. So we'll see. But hopefully it's a good match. Recently, the Rhinos have had some difficulty in second-round Open Cup matches, or whatever the first round that the Rhinos played. Sometimes it's the third round, sometimes it's the second round. But they've had some recent troubles against the amateur teams. I am thinking of, I think it was just last year that the Rhinos needed overtime to beat an amateur side. I don't recall who it was. But it wasn't the first time. The Rhinos have needed overtime. One year they actually needed penalty kicks to beat an amateur side. But the Rhinos still, in every trip to the Open Cup, and they have been invited to the Open Cup, and every single year they've been in existence, they have not yet lost to an amateur club. So hopefully that streak will continue, and they will move on to the third round, which will be next Wednesday, the 27th. They will face, if they beat GBFC tomorrow, they will face either the Harrisburg City Islanders, USL foe, or the Reading United Reading AC United, and they are a PDL club. So they will be making a trip to Pennsylvania. Regardless, they lost the bid to host the third round of the Open Cup. Now, when I saw that they lost the bid, I was surprised. I was like, how does Salem Stadium, obviously it was in the news lately with the scoreboard problem and the turf problem and all that. But aside from that, it is a professional stadium. It sits 13,768 people, and it still looks pretty good. And it's got a really nice sized pitch. That's one of the big advantages of Salem Stadium. The field is very wide. It's definitely an MLS caliber size field. How does Salem Stadium, a professional stadium, lose out to Reading? Well, apparently the U.S. Soccer, starting last year, they changed the bid process a little bit. Every team that wants to host the game puts in a bid to U.S. Soccer, and you have to pay a fee to bid for the game. And they literally just, according to U.S. Soccer, draw out of a hat. And whoever gets drawn gets to host. And that's it. It used to be a little bit different. It used to be a blind bid system where teams would bid a certain amount of money to host a game in said round, and whoever bid the most money in the blind bid would win the game. They changed it up to make it more fair, which is good for the lower level clubs. I mean, the thing is, though, the Rhinos usually got to host even the MLS clubs most of the time, because a lot of times it wasn't worth it to the MLS club to host a game. If just like the Rhinos are hosting an NPSL club, a fourth division club tomorrow, there's not a whole lot of interest. People are like, the Rhinos will beat them. We'll go see them when they play DC United or whatever. And it's the same thinking from MLS fans. It's like, DC United, they're playing Rochester. Why are we going to go to the game? We'll wait until they beat Rochester and they're playing an MLS club and, in the quarterfinal of the cup or whatever. So a lot of times the MLS teams don't even bid to host the game, unless a lot of times if they're if they're looking ahead at the bracket, and there's no set bracket, but if you look at it's regional based. So if you looked at the teams in your region, you might see who you could face, and a lot of times with Rochester, they're always, especially with Bob Lilly coaching now, they're always a dangerous threat to upset you in the Open Cup, and so I think MLS teams might want to host if they can against Rochester. The Rhinos upset DC United last year at home, 1-0. It was an exciting victory. They got lucky. There was a lot of luck in that game. They had a red card and a lightning delay, and the field was a mess. I mean, as much as a turf field can be, and it really held to the Rhinos' advantage because it was hard to get any forward momentum going with all the water that was waterlogged on the field that night. But the Rhinos got lucky and they won, and they beat DC United. They went to New England in the next round and lost pretty handily. I believe it was a 3-0 final in that game. Now they cannot play New England this year, which is good. Finally, they took that out of the tournament because the Rhinos are technically affiliated with the New England Revolution. They're not so much a farm club like Toronto FC2 is of Toronto, or the New York Red Bulls 2 are of the New York Red Bulls, or Seattle, Portland, Vancouver. But they do have 2 players on loan from New England, down from 4 last year. And there could be more coming if New England decides to send guys down. That's always a possibility. But the U.S. Soccer Federation finally sucked it up and said, all right, even if it means teams are going to have to travel more, we're going to make sure that teams are not playing their affiliates, which is good. So the Rhinos will not play New England this year in the Open Cup if they do make it far enough. The 4th round would be the first round that they could play an MLS club. Let's not get ahead of ourselves first, though. The Rhinos need to beat Greater Binghamton FC tomorrow, and if you answer our trivia question, you can win tickets. We're going to talk lacrosse in just a couple minutes. Coming up, joining us on the line will be Jeremy Pike, beat writer for the Knighthawks on NLL.com. He is extremely knowledgeable. He was at the game on Saturday when the Knighthawks defeated the Toronto Rock 10-9 at home to win Game 1 of their best-of-2 East Division final against Toronto. Game 2 will be coming up this Saturday. It was a thrilling 10-9 victory. Dan Dawson with the game-winning goal with 36.1 seconds left in the game, sending the Knighthawks victorious, sending the fans home happy. 5,808 fans in the crowd. Not a great crowd, but it is what it is. It was a hot night, so I get it. People wanted to go to the beach and the Lilac Festival and such. Hopefully, if the Knighthawks do beat Toronto on Saturday, they'll host the least one Champions Cup final game. It's now a best-of-3 series for the Champions Cup, and they'll host at least one game if they can overcome the Toronto Rock on the road this coming Saturday. And hopefully the crowd will be a little better for those championship games. It usually is. Now, it's a best-of-2 series, just like they had last year in the East Division final. So how that works, if Toronto beats Rochester on Saturday, it's a 7 o'clock game at the Air Canada Center, and it will be on television. I'm not sure which channel, but you can check that out. If Toronto wins, the series will be tied at a game apiece, and it would go to a 10-minute mini game. Actually, just the guy we can talk to about this is on the line. Beat writer for the Knighthawks for NLL.com, Jeremy Pike. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I was just talking about this, this best-of-2 format. It's our second year with the best-of-2. It certainly makes for an interesting series. The Knighthawks are out in front 1-0. Are they, would you say, the favorite now? I mean, considering they already beat Toronto on the road earlier this year, 11-7 victory back on April 3rd. Are they the favorite to win the series?
I honestly don't know. It's such a tight rivalry, and the fact that we don't know what Cody Janison's status is at this point, which I have not heard anything.
I was going to ask you about that. I've been looking everywhere on Twitter, on the internet. I haven't seen anything. Are the Knighthawks trying to keep it quiet? Is that what's going on?
It's certainly possible. What I heard was that he was going to actually go back to the Six Nations reservation to have his own, the doctors that know him look at his leg. So it's possible that the results might not be in yet. I honestly don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if they're keeping it quiet, though.
All I heard on the TSN broadcast was the TSN reporter on the bench said that he saw Cody down in the hallway on crutches with ice around his ankles. Is that what you heard?
Yeah, I did not get close to him after the game. I did see him on crutches, but yeah, we were hearing that there was ice on the ankle. I initially thought it might be a knee injury, but it definitely sounds like it's something related to his ankle at this point.
And you got to think that an ankle injury in general is going to be better for you than a knee injury. Usually, a knee injury, you got to worry about season-ending stuff, but sometimes ankle, guys can kind of work through it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, not any kind of non-contact injury is never a good sign, which is what that was. I mean, if it's a twisted ankle, nothing too serious. Yeah, that's a lot better than a non-contact injury with the knee. In my experience, watching sports in general, anyways. Having actually broken my right ankle, actually 10 years ago this summer, ankles can be a bit funky, just with the amount of, lateral movement you put on the ankle, especially in a game like this. But, I do think in general you'd rather see it be an ankle than a knee, though.
So, I mean, let's go through scenarios. If the Knighthawks don't have Cody Jamieson, arguably could be the best lacrosse player in the world, at least indoor-wise. How does that change their game plan going into Toronto? You got to activate Joe Walters, I'm guessing, right?
Absolutely. Dan Dawson was actually talking about that after the game, saying that Walters is going to be very, very motivated heading into next Saturday. So you'll see Walters. Wouldn't surprise me to see Brad Self, getting a little bit more two-way play, but probably not as much as we saw on Saturday, where it seemed, people were cracking jokes that he was never coming off the floor.
I was going to... Was anyone tracking his floor time? Do they track that up in the press box?
I have not seen that stat, but I have to imagine it was probably, it was crazy. There were times where it seemed like he wasn't coming off the floor.
Right.
It's like, oh, wait, hey, there's another offensive shift. Oh, wait, he's back on the defensive side of the floor.
And
it was crazy.
Yeah, and then still enough energy for him to score 6 points, which was a career high. I mean, that had to be the game of his life.
I actually asked him about that after the game. I got to talk to him, and I asked him if he'd ever had a game like this in his memory, and he was just, he's like, maybe in 08, and I think because he did have a playoff hat trick, and I want to say it was either 07 or 08. I think it was 08. But yeah, 6 points, definitely career high. I mean, he responded about as well as you could ask of anybody in the league in that situation. I mean, nobody replaces Cody Jamieson, but 6 points, I mean, that was a heck of a performance that he put on there.
I think, Jeremy, that's what makes the Knighthawks so dangerous is the fact that they don't rely on one player. Yeah, Cody is unbelievable, but, he led the team with just I believe it was 92 points this year, which is relatively not a lot. I mean, you look at Calgary and Sean Evans with, I think it was 130 points. I mean, yeah, that's their whole offense pretty much. The Knighthawks have every guy that's on that offensive floor can score, and I think that's what makes them so dangerous. And you saw that guys picked up for Cody. I mean, guys like Brad Self and Jordan Hall and Dan Dawson coming through at the end.
Yep, and don't forget, Craig Point had a hat trick in that game too. To win 3 championships in a row, you have to have incredible organizational depth. And I think you can make the argument that this year, this roster is deeper than it's been. Reacquiring Jordan Hall, who played for them in the past. The trade deadline deal for Joe
Rochester, it's been an unbelievable deal.
Yeah, and they don't beat Buffalo without Rochester.
Right. Yeah.
Last round, and he, and then he might have had a fairly quiet night against Toronto, but the third quarter, not long after Toronto ties it up at 5, Rochester ends that 4-goal run because the Knighthawks had that 5-1 lead, and Rochester gets the first goal in a while. Toronto kept tying it up, but who knows? If Rochester doesn't score there, we could have had a completely different game.
We're talking with Jeremy Pike, beat writer for the Knighthawks and NLL.com. So what was the reason that Joe Walters was a healthy scratch? Was it because they had to keep Joe Reseteris in the lineup?
That's a great question. I never really got a full answer. There was a lot of debate about that up in the press box. It might have been something that they were seeing with the Rock defense towards the end of the season where, they were looking for a certain type of lineup out there. But obviously, if Jameson's not good to go next Saturday, that's not going to matter. Walters is going to be out there.
Man, that Dan Dawson goal at the end was that was a cool goal. I mean, not only the goal, but the scoop, the loose ball one-handed and then just dangles around a guy with the one hand and then just completely fools Brandon Miller. Did that make SportsCenter? I thought I saw a tweet about that. It did, right? Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was getting a pretty good amount of play on SportsCenter. They had it up within a couple of hours. We're up in the press box, and when he ended up, the ball was loose on the floor. It's just kind of like, okay, all right, get the defense out there, just get ready, just hold their transition, get the defense out there, play 5-on-5,
right.
And then all of a sudden he scoops the ball up and he's like, wait, what? And then, we're all just up there looking around at each other going, did we just see that?
Right. For the winning goal, too. I mean, man.
Yeah, I'm sitting next to a guy from the Rock, actually, up in the press box, and he and I are just looking at each other, and he just mouthed, wow.
Yeah.
What do you do? What can you do in that situation?
And then the frustration from the Rock bench showed at the ensuing face-off. There was a call. I don't know what it was, but it gave the Knighthawks the ball, and the Rock coach throws his challenge flag at the referee. That was like, very funny.
Yeah, we're all like, I don't think that's going to help you that much.
I saw the referee just pick it up, and it was one of the veteran guys just stares back at the bench like, really? Like, I'm not even going to bother going over there.
Yep.
I'll keep this, right?
But yeah, it was, and I understand their frustration. It wasn't like the Knighthawks did anything wrong or anything. It's just like, it's with 36 seconds left on the clock, you're going to be in a bad position if you don't win that face-off.
Mm-hmm.
And then because, give Toronto credit, they fought tooth and nail on that face-off. And, unfortunately, for the Rock, when, the refs signaled that it was Nighthawks ball, I think it was already under 30 seconds left, which means no shot clock.
Yeah.
And it just became an intense game of runaway.
Yeah.
The Nighthawks were just running for their lives.
That's
essentially.
What you got to do.
Ball.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes
for very tense last 30 seconds.
Jeremy, speaking of referees, there was a controversial goal in that game at the end of the first half. It looked to me, and I think to a lot of Knighthawks fans, like the clock had expired before the ball went in the net, but it was called a goal on the field, and the Knighthawks were burned by the old inconclusive evidence thing, which, we see all the time in football and baseball and whatsoever. Yep. But what was did you guys get a look at that replay up there in the press box?
Yeah, we were watching the Jumbotron just like the fans were in the, in the arena. And, once again, I was talking with The Rock, one of the guys with The Rock, we were having a good time just, talking about the action on the field. It was a very pleasant conversation. But, he was convinced it wasn't a goal. To our ears, we heard the buzzer sound with no time left, and it, in live full speed, it sounded like the buzzer went off before the ball went in the net. And then the problem was there didn't appear to be an angle that showed double zeros on the clock where you could actually see the net.
Now, did they have? Because I know for hockey, when they have reviews for AHL games, they have an overhead view of the goal, which there's also a clock, a view of the clock that's on the same screen. So you'd think that they'd be able to see that.
Well, I have never seen that angle in the 2 years I've been covering the Knighthawks. I've never seen an angle shown on the Jumbotron like that. I mean, that would have been absolutely ideal.
Right. I wonder it might be different for the NLL. I'm wondering if they just take the TV broadcast feed and there's no separate like in arena camera. They don't use the one that they use for hockey. Maybe.
Yeah, that may certainly be it. I did see an actual interesting proposal, and this was actually by a guy who covered is a self-professed rock fan, but he said, this is. I'm not a Nighthawks fan. Obviously, I cheer and I watch The Rock. But as a lacrosse fan, something needs to be done with this because if there's under 30 seconds left to go in a quarter and a half in the game, whatever, they turn the shot clocks off.
Right.
His proposal was to actually sync the shot clock with the game clock.
It's a pretty good idea, except I think the only problem you'd run into is when you set. I'm guessing when they set the shot clock, they can't set it with tenths of a second, can they?
Yeah.
Because that would pose a problem if you have 24.7 seconds left and you can only set the clock to 24. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's actually a great point there. So maybe that's very true. That's only going down by the second.
Yeah.
So,
it seems like they just got to find a way to get an angle of that overhead angle. I think would be perfect with the clock, synced up and on the same screen.
There did appear to be one angle because they have the goal at both ends. They have both the goal light and then a second green light.
Right, the green light. Yep.
And there was an angle where it did appear that you could see Brett Hickey, who's the guy who scored the goal, winding up and about to release, and the green light goes on.
That would be conclusive evidence right there, you'd think.
Correct, but, because you don't actually see the game clock, can you be certain that those are synced up? I honestly don't know. I don't know if that's a manual thing that green light.
It's not. I'm pretty sure it's automatic. It goes with the buzzer.
Yeah, so that might be the one angle that could have showed it. But once again, is that going to be enough in a referee's mind to overrule the guy making the call on the turf?
Right. Well, I mean, either way, Jeremy, it was inconsequential, and that's another great thing about the Knighthawks. It seems like whenever there's a call that goes against them, they overcome it. They find a way to get the extra goal that they need. Regardless of the calls on the field, which is the mark of a championship team.
Absolutely, these guys are incredibly resilient. Even if you want to go back earlier this season, for example, of it, when they hosted the Edmonton Rush and they were embarrassed.
Yeah.
Talking to them after the game, they got flat out embarrassed. They, they go on
16-3.
Yeah, I mean that was the worst home defeat in the team's history.
Right.
And they were embarrassed, but their demeanor was not one of, oh, the world is ending. It was like, that was terrible. On to next week. This is a team that doesn't allow themselves to get too high after a huge win or too low after a huge loss because they responded. They went out and won on the road, and then they came back 2 weeks later against Mammoth and put on that 10-2 show where the defense was just some of the best defensive play you will see in the game of lacrosse.
Yeah, amazing.
They wanted to come back and put a show on for the fans. They talked about it all week leading up to it. They talked about it after the game. They felt like they owed the fans a dominant performance, and they came through in spades. But yeah, this is a team that just understands what it takes to get it done and doesn't get too high or too low.
Jeremy, this is Jeremy Pike, the Knighthawks beat writer for NLL.com. Speaking of the fans, the attendance was it was all right. It was only 5808. There's some talk this week. I know on John DeTulio's show they were talking about why the attendance isn't better for the playoffs. But I was looking back, other than the championship games, it traditionally the Knighthawks have not drawn great for the quarterfinals or the semifinals. Looking back to like 2013, for example, they drew just 5,093 in the East Division Finals, 5,963 in the East Division Semifinals. 2012, 5,176 in the semifinals. So it wasn't really that out of the ordinary, but it is kind of a shame that they can't seem to draw what they do in the regular season in the playoffs.
We were shocked up in the press box that it was that low because if you were in the arena and if you were focused on the game, how loud it was.
Yeah, right. You couldn't tell. Yeah,
absolutely. It was one of the louder non-Bandits games. I'll put it to you that way. The Bandits games are. It is absolutely one of the coolest atmospheres in all of sports in my mind because you get such a good contingent of Bandits fans, and you just get that back and forth chant going, and it's just, even though I've been through it, multiple games, playoff, non-playoff, it's still one of those things when, player intros start and the fan bases get wound up. It is just absolutely mind-boggling.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, but yeah, it is a shame that you're seeing like less than 6,000 fans for playoffs for a team going for its fourth straight championship, and it's not like the tickets are exorbitant by any stretch of the imagination.
They actually lowered the ticket prices. I saw it was only I think $23 as opposed to $35 in the regular season.
Yeah, and I mean you could, and then I think they were doing the package for $25 where you got a ticket and a T-shirt.
Right.
Right. That's a steal.
Yeah.
I mean, you go out and get a T-shirt these days, and you're looking at if it's a regular price shirt, $20 to $25. And here you are, you get a ticket.
Jeremy, I think I know the NLL wanted to extend the regular season, which they did, and they extended the playoffs. But I think going this late into spring really kind of works against them. I mean, the weather was gorgeous on Saturday night, and I don't blame people for wanting to go to the Lilac Fest or go down to Charlotte and hang out by the beach instead of going indoors for a lacrosse game.
Yeah, I mean, you may have hit it out there on the head with the Lilac Festival. I mean, that's such a huge part of what Rochester is during this time of year. So, I mean, you could almost look at it as nearly 6,000 while competing with the Lilac Festival. Right. That's actually a really good turnout. I did see some Toronto Rock fans there, but it was, it wasn't a huge amount. But yeah, if the finals goes 3 rounds, we're looking at almost halfway through June.
Yeah, it'll be right in line with when the Stanley Cup finals are kind of wrapping up.
And I mean, and I think we all agree playing hockey into June while we love watching as much sports as we can. There's something kind of odd about playing ice hockey
in
the middle of June.
Especially, it's going to maybe be in Anaheim, the finals, right?
I wonder what the ice conditions are going to be.
Sure.
But yeah, I've talked about this with a number of people, just other sports writers and fans. And, being an indoor sport, some people do question why it doesn't start a little bit earlier because it's already in conflict. There's already having to juggle schedules with AHL hockey or NHL hockey in the case of some of the teams. So, starting even just a month earlier when people would rather be indoors than outdoors, and I mean, it's right in downtown Rochester, so it's not like you have to go really far out of your way to get there, like in some places you might have to.
And you look at like the Knighthawks seem to have made it an annual occurrence to host a free preseason game in early December against Minnesota, and I know it's free, but it's always sold out. It's completely sold out. I mean, it's like, obviously, it's not the time of the year. People will go to see lacrosse in December.
Absolutely. And I think for most people, they would have no problem with that because, okay, we do have some bad weather in December. Let's face it, here in Rochester, when are our worst months?
February.
February and March.
Right.
I remember last year, I think it was a game in March, where the drive out wasn't bad, But while we were at the game, it dumped. It was that Saturday night snowstorm where it just absolutely unleashed on us.
Yeah.
While we were at the arena, I live out in Wayne County, so I have about a 40-45 minute drive. It took me darn near 2 hours to get home that night. And, so the only thing I can think of is they don't really want to conflict too much with the holidays.
Yeah. And the other thing that bothers me as an American lacrosse fan is the fact that they seem to want to compete with the MLL instead of work with the MLL, which I think has been a change in policy over the years. Just the fact that the MLL moved their schedule up 2 weeks and the NLL moved theirs back like 3 weeks this year. Now it's nearly impossible for players. I mean, Cody Jamieson signed with the New York Lizards, who are the best team in Major League Lacrosse by far right now. They're scary good. But by the time he joins, if the Knighthawks go all the way to the final again, by the time he joins the Lizards, the season will be over halfway done.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Joe Walters with
Chesapeake,
Steve Keogh, I think, is still still with the Florida
right
Launch.
With Florida, yep.
So yeah, they're but I don't really want to get too much into that because there's a division of my personal thoughts, and then the NLL is truly focused, as it should be, on how to grow
the indoor game. Yeah, their brand of lacrosse. And yeah, you're right. It doesn't seem like they're too concerned about the crossover fans and the crossover players.
And and as you see, it's not like these playoff teams where there is that conflict. You're not seeing NLL players who are in the playoffs jumping ship.
No, which is good, yeah.
Exactly, so obviously that's where those guys are at, and I mean that's good for the league that these guys are committed to the NLL to that degree. So that's great for them. You're seeing guys who, we're going to go play in the MLL come, the end of our season, but right here, right now, this is where our commitment is, and you see that across the league. If you're in the hunt for the playoffs and then you're in the playoffs, you're staying there. I mean, it's playoffs. It doesn't matter.
Right.
If we get a chance to win it all, we're not giving that up.
Right. We're talking with Jeremy Pike, beat writer for the Knighthawks on NLL.com here on Rochester Sports Mumblings. Jeremy, out west, we have another really cool series going on, the Alberta rivalry, Edmonton and Calgary. Edmonton beat Calgary 10-8 in the first game at home. Is that series over, or do you think Calgary's got a shot?
It is not over, and because of a quirk in the scheduling, this next game is going to be very interesting. Edmonton's the higher seed, but due to an issue with their home floor, scheduling-wise, they actually had to play game one of a 2-game series in Edmonton rather than in Calgary.
Right.
So, Edmonton is heading into game 2 with the 1-game lead, but it's going home to Calgary, and, hats off to Calgary. They had a rough start to their season, and they have responded in a big way.
I was shocked at how poorly they were playing early in the season, coming off playing in the championship against Rochester and really retaining most of their team. They just kind of crapped the bed early in the year.
Yeah, and you can wonder if that's sort of, that hangover of coming so close. Because the other thing to remember is, this year's flipping to the best of 3 format, like you were talking about before I came on, it still was the best of 2 with the 10-minute mini game.
Mm-hmm. So
in that series, Calgary won game 1 and then came to Rochester and had to go through losing game 2 and then having a 2-0 lead in the 10-minute mini game with less than 5 minutes to go.
And then losing. Unbelievable.
Pulling off that under 5-minute stretch of
magical.
correct point. Joe Walters just teeing off, and then the last 14 seconds of that game, the mad scramble and the Nighthawks defensive end was insanely tense, especially considering the Nighthawks had actually come off in the previous series against Buffalo, where the 10-minute minigame actually went to sudden death.
To overtime, right. Man, I mean, as far as the league coming up, with that new playoff format, I don't think it could have worked out any better for them last year. You had two of the most exciting, and then I think even in the West last year, there was I think one of them either went down the wire or went to overtime as well out West. I think it's great. I know the players hate it because you can just throw away your entire season in like a minute, but I think for the fans, I think it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody was going nuts. That Buffalo mini game, and then sudden death overtime. The arena was insane. It's just this absolute boiling down of lacrosse to 10 minutes of absolute mind-numbing fury.
Right.
It's like a heart attack waiting to happen. It's so draining, and I think that was part of it for Calgary, was that you get so far, you work so hard, you win game one, then you have to come back to the Blue Cross Arena. Game two, 10-minute mini game. It is just so exhausting.
But
And then you get that time off, but it's kind of hard to escape that feeling of we were so close. But kudos to them.
Yeah. And and you got to root for Sean Evans. I mean, it kind of he was one of my favorite guys to watch when he was here. I mean, he's a short little dude, but so feisty and so talented offensively.
And he's carried them so well this year. And I remember seeing him in the post game conference of the championship final. You could just see how much pain, not physical but emotional and mental pain he was going through. And so even with Calgary's early struggles, Evans has had a campaign for the ages over there.
I mean, he set the all-time points record, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Edmonton, an absolutely phenomenal team, but the fact that there's this quirk that means that even though they're the higher seed, they have to go into Calgary. That series is far, far, far from over. Calgary had that comeback late in the game to tie it up at 8. No, Calgary is not a team at this point that's going to roll over. They want to get back to the finals. They do want to make up for their coming up short, and it wasn't by much in last year's finals.
Well, Jeremy, I can't wait till Saturday. It's cool we have a doubleheader on Saturday in the NLL. The Nighthawks and Toronto at 7, and then the West game at 9:30. So it's going to be a fun night of lacrosse. And by the end of the night, we'll know who's in the final.
Yeah, and everybody's just going to be on pins and needles because nothing is going to be resolved in terms of who's playing where until the end of until that Calgary Edmonton series wraps up.
Right.
We won't know anything. We won't. If Rochester pulls it out in Toronto, it's like, okay, so we're in the finals, but are we going to be the top? Are we going to be having home field advantage, or are we going to be away? And it's going to be crazy.
Jeremy, one last thing. I know you're kind of on the inside in the box lacrosse world. The NLL has been pretty stable at 9 teams for a while now. Is there any talk at all of expansion, or is that ship kind of sailed?
I have not heard anything. I think that they want, just speaking from my own personal thoughts, with moving Philly to New England, you want to make sure that New England's going to be stable.
Mm-hmm.
That where they are right now, the vast majority of the franchises are quite stable, but you're not seeing huge increases in attendance like we've been talking about with Rochester. Capacity is over 10,000, but Rochester doesn't really have any issues, huge issues there.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you want to be seeing packed arenas. You want to be seeing this huge demand for the product before you start investing more into expansion. I think they
Which
want to
is
make
maybe
sure.
a mistake they made in the past. It seemed like they just wanted to expand for the sake of expansion, and maybe they went to some places that, weren't really ready to support lacrosse. You think of like Anaheim and San Jose and, Pittsburgh and places like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever want to have a little bit of fun, go look at, go on to NLL.com, go look up some of these players that have been in the league for, 10 plus years, and just see where they've had
all the cities, right?
Yeah, I talked to Brody Merrill of the Rock after the game on Saturday, and he was drafted by the Portland Lumberjacks.
Yeah, remember them? They went to the final against Buffalo a couple of years back.
Yeah, that was one of the things we were talking about. Was he is one of the very, very best players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
He does so much. He's got such a well-rounded game, and he's never won a cup. They came away. They lost by 1 goal in that final, and he's been back to the playoffs, but he's never gotten to lift that cup. And so it's crazy just to see how many different teams have moved, how many different teams have folded. But I think while it's not ideal to have an odd number of teams, because 3 out of the 4 Western teams make it to the playoffs, while 3 out of the 5 Eastern teams make it. So there's kind of a little bit of imbalance there. The smart thing would be, let's just make sure that we are in an extremely stable footing with the 9 franchises that we have. Focus on growing our game. Keep working on these partnerships with.
Jeremy, the one city I could think of that seems like it should have a team is Montreal. They've been hosting preseason games again. The Rochester's played in them the last 2 years in a row, and they've drawn pretty well. It seems like they could hold a team again.
But then the question becomes, that's still. Then you're looking geographically at some questions.
Yeah, then you're gonna have to move someone out west. Well, it would be Minnesota. Is Minnesota in the west or east? I forget right now.
Minnesota's in the east, so yeah.
So you'd have to move. Yeah, you'd move Minnesota out west again.
So Quebec could be a really, really interesting option. Like you said, play the preseason games up there at the Bell Center have done extremely well.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things that they've done is actually bring in some of the local players and letting them actually play.
Really, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, last year, I think it was only 1 player for each of the teams, but yeah, they'll actually suit up local guys who play in some. Yeah, so it's a really cool experience for them. But there's definitely that that avenue. You'd probably see it come out of a Canadian, I would think, just because they've got there's so much demand for lacrosse.
Yeah, and and they've got much better television coverage, and I think media coverage in general for the NLL in Canada. I mean, it makes sense. Box lacrosse is more the Canadian game, and field lacrosse is the American game. So there's more television media coverage for the MLL, I think, in our country. But yeah, I think Canada would make sense. Jeremy, we got to let you go. This was amazing. Thank you so much. I love your work on NLL.com. Check out his work on NLL.com. He's the Knighthawks beat writer, and follow him on Twitter at @KnighthawksBeat.
Well, thank you for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll have some more to talk about.
Absolutely. Hopefully well into June, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Jeremy Pike, Knighthawks beat writer for NLL.com. Okay, we got to tell you about some sponsors. Rochester Sports and Physical Therapy 2 at 125 Red Creek Drive, conveniently located off of the Calkins Road exit off 390 in Henrietta, is your home for all of your physical therapy needs. I was just there before the show today, still working on rehabbing my knee, trying to get back playing sports pretty soon. My physical therapist, Katie, she has been unbelievable. She's been doing this for over 20 years, so she knows exactly what she's doing. They have all of the physical therapy equipment you could possibly ever need. Whether you need to rehab from knee surgery like I did, or you have back pain, shoulder problems, sprained ankle, anything like that, head over to Rochester Sports and Physical Therapy 2. Here's the best part. You do not even need a prescription from your doctor. Most insurances cover at least 10 visits to a physical therapist for any reason. Give them a call today, and please tell them you heard them on our show, Rochester Sports Mumblings. If you want to shorten it up, just say Sports Mumblings. We do have a trivia winner. Congratulations to Tom Ingalls. You knew that Billy Andracki was the Rhinos goalkeeper in the 1996 U.S. Open Cup final against DC United. It's pretty amazing to think that in the Rhinos' first season as a professional franchise, they made it all the way to the Open Cup final, and that was when MLS teams were invited into the Open Cup and played. In fact, the Rhinos beat two MLS clubs that year en route to the final. They beat the Tampa Bay Mutiny. And, oh, God, I think they beat, was it Dallas? I don't know who they beat in the semifinals. I should know. I do not, though. But, yep, they end up losing to DC United, and Billy Andracki was the unfortunate man standing in between the pipes at RFK Stadium and let in 3 goals. There were 3 pretty nice goals. The Rhinos, I was watching highlights of that last night, actually, when I wrote up this trivia question on YouTube. I think it was Hector Mariano for the Rhinos had a beautiful bicycle kick right by the penalty spot, and it was saved by the DC United keeper to keep that game, to keep the Rhinos off the scoreboard at least. So it was exciting stuff to see the Rhinos playing at RFK Stadium way back in 1996. And just a reminder, this Wednesday, tomorrow, if you're listening on our live show or on latenightsportsradio.com, Wednesday night, go check out the Rhinos at home, 7:05, their second round U.S. Open Cup matchup against Greater Binghamton FC Thunder. And season tickets are, by the way, tickets for that Open Cup match are just $10 for all tickets. So you can sit right in the middle in the club seats, just $10. And season tickets are still available for just $99. Also, the Rattlers, who had so much to talk about today, did not even mention the Rattlers. They scored 2 goals in the last 2 minutes in Boston at Foxborough Stadium in where the New England Patriots play, and to tie that game up at 16, send it to overtime, going for their 3rd straight overtime victory. They could not get it done, lost the opening faceoff in overtime, and I believe it was Max Sebald who scored for the Cannons to win a wild one, 17-16. Rattlers fell to 3-3. They are playing at Chesapeake on May 30th. They get this week off, but they return home to Eunice Kennedy Shriver Stadium on the campus of SUNY Brockport Sunday, June 3rd, versus the Boston Cannons. Face off at 1 o'clock, and tickets are just $15 for that one. Also, all Brockport students just $5. God, we are so over time already. I want to mention so many things. Hockey, the Amherst are finally moving to the Eastern Conference. It's been long awaited due to the creation of the American Hockey League's Pacific Division. The Amherst will now compete in the Eastern Conference. They were placed in a 7-team North Division with Albany, Binghamton, Syracuse, Utica, Toronto, and St. John's. So pretty cool to see all of the New York teams finally back together. Brings back memories of the old Empire Division in the AHL back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Finally, the Amherst reunited with Syracuse and with Binghamton in the same division. Speaking of Syracuse, they'll host the 2016 AHL All-Star Game. So the All-Star Game moves about 25 miles to the left this year. It was in Utica earlier this year in January. It'll be in Syracuse next January 31st and February 1st, Sunday and Monday night as usual. And the Pacific Division, the new division, 7 teams, Bakersfield, Ontario, San Antonio, San Diego, San Jose, Stockton, and Texas. And it looks like they will be playing 68 games, while the other 3 divisions will be playing 76. That is the word. Within the Pacific Division, they will play each other team 10 times, and then each team will play 8 games from outside the division. Probably it will be teams from the Central, teams like Charlotte, Chicago, Grand Rapids, Iowa, Lake Erie, Manitoba Moose, who are back, Milwaukee, and Rockford. 2 good things about the new AHL. Obviously, the whole some teams playing 68 games and some teams playing 76 games, frankly, sucks. It completely throws off the playoff format. I mean, obviously, if you're playing 68 games in the same window of time that every other team in the league plays 76 games, how can you have a huge advantage? Huge advantage. You're playing less games, a lot less games. You're playing like an eighth of the season less in the same amount of time. So those teams in Bakersfield, Ontario, San Antonio, San Diego, San Jose, Stockton, and Texas, they got to be thrilled because you're going to be much more prepared for the playoffs. Here's what I would do if I was the AHL. I doubt this will happen, but I would make those teams play a best of 7 in the first round and make everyone else play best of 5. I think that would even it out a little bit. Then once you get to the second round, they're going to be a little more tired, which they should be, and the other division will be a little fresher. Probably won't happen. Just a suggestion, but it looks like they're going to maybe adopt the NHL's playoff thing and have the top 3 from each division, and then 2 wild cards make the playoffs, or maybe they'll just go top 4. I prefer if you have the top 4 teams in each division make the playoffs, and then you do the old crossover. So let's say in one of the 8-team divisions, if the 5th place team in that division has a better record than the 4th place team in the smaller division, you just have them cross over. That's what I would prefer. But we'll see what happens. They always meet, the AHL owners meet in a very nice exclusive hotel in Hilton Head, South Carolina, after the Calder Cup playoffs end, and they kind of decide everything. This is actually one of the earliest times we've ever had an announcement of the All-Star game, which is unique. Sometimes they don't announce it till like November, because a lot of times teams don't like. There's been years where no one wants to host the All-Star game because it's a huge undertaking. In minor league sports, you have a small staff, and they work insane hours. During the season, they'll be in the office from 8 a.m. until, if there's a game that night, they'll be there till midnight, and it's a lot of work. And if you have to sell tickets, not just for 40 or 38 or now 34 regular season games, you got to sell tickets for playoffs, or for an All-Star game. It's just a lot of work, and a lot of times they don't make a lot of money off it. So, but Syracuse, I think they saw how successful it was in Utica, and maybe they'll get Turning Stone as a sponsor again. That would make sense. Send people over there after the game. I don't see why not. I think it could be a successful thing. It'd be nice to see Rochester host an All-Star game again. They haven't hosted it since 2000. It's been a while, and Blue Cross Arena is still a great-looking venue, and I think it would draw pretty well. They sold out back in 2000. I don't see why they couldn't at least come close to selling out again. So who knows? Maybe 2017 will move just to the left a little more, and Rochester will host the game. We shall see. But 2 good things about the new AHL. One, geographically speaking, the league makes more sense than it's made in a really, really long time. You've got the North Division, you got the 5 New York State teams, and then Toronto, which is practically in New York State, except it's not, but it's close. It's right across the lake. And then you throw in St. John's, which makes no sense, obviously, because Newfoundland is 1,200 miles away to the east. You have to fly there, obviously. The ferry takes a while. So you got to fly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But when you're out in the middle of the ocean, what are you going to do? You can't play in a division by yourself. So you got to play somewhere. All right. So they got St. John's, and, they can have a rivalry with Toronto. So I think that makes somewhat the Atlantic Division, Bridgeport, Hartford, Hershey, Lehigh Valley, Portland, Providence, Springfield, Wilkes-Barre, all kind of in the same region. You got a couple states that are represented. You got Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. So that's pretty consolidated. Central Division, Charlotte, that's another team like St. John's. It's hard to place them in a division. They're kind of in the middle. No, they're the only now Southern American Hockey League team left. Chicago, Grand Rapids, Iowa, Cleveland, Manitoba, Milwaukee, Rockford, all kind of in the same region. And then you got the West. So it makes more sense than ever. The other good thing, the Norfolk Admirals, Norfolk was great. They drew terrific for AHL hockey, and they're now going to have an ECHL team. But it was always goofy that you had a AAA hockey league, second, well, probably third highest level of hockey in the world, and there were two teams with the same name. You had the Milwaukee Admirals and the Norfolk Admirals. So now Norfolk's gone. It's just the Milwaukee Admirals. So I guess Milwaukee won the battle at sea. So good on Milwaukee. Okay, couple more sponsors, then we'll wrap it up. Guys, look in the mirror. Do you want to lose weight? I know I did. So I heard this ad on the radio, and I was like, wow, this sounds really cool, and it sounds like it actually works. And you know what? It absolutely 100% works. I lost 20 pounds. It only took me 26 days to lose that weight. I have now been keeping off the weight for about 2.5 weeks. I feel great. I have run into so many people that are like, wow, did you lose weight? You lost a lot. I'm like, yeah, I did. And I feel great. I feel faster. I have way more energy than I had before I started the weight loss program. It's just fantastic. I'm sleeping less because I have more energy. I just have more energy to do things, and I really owe it all to this weight loss program. All right, I know you're wondering, what's the program, Matt? Tell us the program. Well, it is Dr. Matt Boehm and his crew at Restoration Wellness. They have a custom fat loss system for you, and they guarantee, this is the best part, they guarantee you lose the weight. They don't even need to guarantee you're going to lose the weight, because trust me, you will lose the weight. The system, if you follow the system, and it takes a little bit of discipline, but if you follow the system, you will lose the weight. The system always works. It worked for me. And it's customized just for you. They're going to do some tests. The tests are the easiest thing. You won't believe how I went in for the consultation. I'm like, that's it? But they have the best technology, okay? They have these really cool meters that you just step on, and they send harmless electrical signals up through you, and they measure the exact amount of fat in your body, the exact amount of water in your body, and they see what's going on with your hormones. What can they do to tweak your hormones so you will go from fat storing to fat burning? And that's exactly what happened with me. I lost 20 pounds in just 26 days. I'm keeping it off. So I know you're intrigued. Give them a call right now, 844-THIN-ME. That's 844-THIN-ME, or go to their website at loseweightrochester.com. That's loseweightrochester.com. And please tell them they have a special right now, $27 consultations. Normally it's $99. And tell them you heard about it on our show, Sports Mumblings, or Rochester Sports Mumblings. Tell them you heard about it, and it'll be a good plug for us. And you're going to love the way you look, I guarantee it. Sorry, I had to throw that in there from the old Men's Warehouse commercials. But really, I love looking in the mirror now because I'm thinner, and I look much better than I did before, and I feel better. And I've been recommending this program to everyone that I see that looks like they could lose a little weight. It feels great to lose weight. Go to loseweightrochester.com or call 844-THIN-ME. How's your car running? Your car all right? My car's great. I love my car. But when I did have problems with it, I went to our good friend Mark Sotili, Rochester Lancers goalkeeper, and the best mechanic I've ever known, the coolest mechanic I've ever known. He's hilarious, and he knows exactly what he's doing with your car. He's open 6 days a week, exceptional service, been serving our community for over 5 years, and trust me, folks, the most reasonable prices in Rochester. Give him a call today, 319-4562, 319-4562, and tell him you heard him heard about it on Sports Mumblings. $15.95 oil changes, too. Just $15.95 to get your oil change. And we're going to tell you about the Mirage, the official bar and strip club of Rochester Sports Mumblings, 414 Westridge Road in Rochester, where you can see up to 20 of the hottest girls in Rochester. And they do have the hottest girls in Rochester. Trust me, I've been to the other clubs. It's not even close. They also are known for having the coldest beer, great drink selection. They're open early on Fridays for happy hour, so come in at 4 o'clock on Fridays for happy hour at the bar, and free admission on Fridays. Other nights open 8 o'clock all the way up until 2. Even stay after, Friday and Saturday nights. You can get private dances all the way up until 2:30. So hang out late on Friday and Saturdays. It's a great hangout place. Bring your buddies. If you got girlfriends, they like going to the strip club too sometimes. See a lot of girls over there, once in a while. So hang out at the Mirage. That's the official bar and strip club of Rochester Sports Mumblings. And check out our good friends at RochesterDealsNewYork.com. RochesterDealsNewYork.com, your new headquarters for events and deals in the Rochester area. Check out their app on Android and iPhone. Just search for Rochester Deals NY. Or check them out on Twitter at Rochester_deals or Facebook.com/Rochester Deals New York. And thank you to all the other shows on our wonderful RockSportsNetwork.com. Matt and Matt have a baseball show coming up after their very successful run with a hockey show called Mad Men on Ice. Rob, our intro guy, and the Big Schmaz. Superstar Rob Schultz and Ivan the Impaler. And they've been doing a ton of local high school lacrosse broadcasts. And they do a great job with those. So check them out at RockSportsNetwork.com. And thank you to LateNightSportsRadio.com, where you hear us Tuesdays at 10 p.m. And have a great Rock Sports Week. Rochester Knighthawks playoffs Saturday night. Rhinos home Wednesday and on the road Saturday. Flasher home Saturday night. Sidney LaRue scored an amazing goal for Team USA the other night at an impossible angle. And it's just really cool that we have her playing in Rochester this summer. So go check out the Flash. You won't see Sydney because she's with the U.S. national team, but she'll be back later in the year. All right, guys. We'll talk to you next week.